7 of Descent into the Wormhole, where we discuss everything from ancient civilizations to modern day social issues and everything in between. I'm Les.
And I'm Stevie J, and today we're talking about a 9/11 and all of the events that surrounded it. Have you been told the truth? Grab your tinfoil hat, grab your coffee, and let's get into it. Ooh, this one, it is going to be a big one, and so big that we're going to split this over 2 episodes, right? So
Yeah.
we'll be doing this one and then one tomorrow. So,
Yes. Yeah.
oh, it is a big one. How are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling really good about it. I'm feeling really good. It's one of the biggest um things that don't have answers.
Right, it's a big question mark, isn't it? A big question
Yeah.
mark of our time. Like,
Yeah.
and can you believe it's going to be the 20th anniversary? 20
No.
years since it happened.
No, because I, as everybody does, I remember exactly where I was.
hmm Yeah, me too. Yeah, I remember very, very clearly. And it's interesting because we're going to get into, of course, some things that are not clear about 9/11, and there are
Yeah.
many, many things that are not clear. But I think
Yeah.
what we wanted to say to start off with as well was that while we certainly disagree with mainstream official story of 9/11,
Mhm.
we do recognize and sympathize with the families and with all of those poor people who lost their lives on 9/11
Yep.
in the Twin
Yep.
Towers and everywhere else. So, first responders and everything like that. So, we while we don't agree with the official story, we do sympathize with all of those people. Well,
Absolutely. And it's the scale of the amount of people that we're talking about that angers me to the point that we don't have like everything. Like the only thing that is confirmed is that people died. Like
yes,
that's the only thing we know for sure. The rest is just a huge question mark on top of question mark. And I have a huge problem with that because
right.
these people and their families deserve a true answer.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I agree. I couldn't agree more. That's what this is all about because so many people died, and what for? That's the
Yeah.
real question. What for? And at
Yeah.
the hands of who? And so that's what we're going to get into today and tomorrow, and it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting. So,
Yes.
did you want to start with the official story, the official narrative that is pushed by the mainstream media and the government about
Yep.
what occurred on 9/11?
Yes. You read the report, right?
I did. I did read the report. It was a very long time ago. I haven't read it since, but I guess the recap, or for me, and you chime in with anything that you have to add. But the essential summary for me is that 19 Al Qaeda terrorists hijacked 4 planes on the morning of September 11th, 2 being flown into the Twin Towers, 1 into the Pentagon, and 1 crashing in a field in Shanksville. And the official narrative following on from that around the Twin Towers was that fires from the jet fuel in the aeroplanes burned so hot that it caused structural failure of the steel and concrete in 110-story buildings, and they collapsed at free fall
Right.
speed. And that the official story is that is 100% accurate, true, and nothing else
Yeah.
went wrong. And the other part of the official story, just to put this premise there at the beginning, is that the Pentagon was struck by a plane, of course,
Mhm.
and that it caused major damage to the outside of the building, killed a whole lot
Mhm.
of people, unfortunately. And Shanksville, that's an interesting one because that
Mhm.
was allegedly the hijackers were overthrown by passengers and they brought the plane down. So many things to get into here. Just listing this off, it's getting my juices flowing. And
Yep.
so the other thing too is I feel like I missed one. Sorry, you go.
No, but how quickly they found who did it because they found the passports
Yes.
of the gentleman and a driver's license of another gentleman from the plane that was, slammed into the building. And it was quickly identified that it was um oh my goodness, I just blocked in his name. Bin Laden. That's him.
It's
he's
Osama bin
he's
Laden.
so
Yes.
important to me that I blanked on his name.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
So just that got neatly wrapped up all in one day.
Yep, absolutely. And the last
Yeah.
little bit that I did forget as well, thank you for adding that in because I forgot that bit too. But uh, World Trade Center 7, Building 7.
Yes.
Lots of people either do not know about Building 7 or just have forgotten about it. But the official
Mhm.
story of Building 7 was that debris from Twin Towers got into World Trade Center 7, the building, 47-story building, started fires. The sprinkler system didn't have enough pressure, and therefore the fires caused a structural collapse of that building as well. And you can tell
Yep.
when
They had to
I'm,
pull it.
yeah, yeah, they had to pull it. You can tell when I'm talking about this that I'm not invested in that story at all.
No.
So anyway, that's the official kind of summary of what the 9/11 Commission report says. But what's interesting about the 9/11 Commission report is a lot of things it doesn't say.
It doesn't say a lot of things. It doesn't say a lot of things because the investigation only goes up until the point that the building's collapsed. The first sign of collapse is when they stopped their investigation. Two buildings collapsed in on their own footprint, and they didn't investigate that.
Exactly. Exactly. I
Actually,
mean,
three buildings. I'm sorry,
yeah. Yep.
seven as well. Seven also imploded in on itself in its own footprint.
It did.
Three buildings did that. To me, they defied the laws of gravity,
Yep. Well, they did.
collapsed in on themselves,
Yeah.
and that they didn't. We don't want to look at that. We don't want to look at that.
Yeah. And that, to me, that's just horrible because you think, the majority of the people who died on 9/11 were the ones in the buildings, right? Like
Right.
the
Right.
employees, the first responders, all of that sort of thing. And
Yep.
the US government has been, well, they've been downright disrespectful and negligent in their investigation to give these people an answer of what happened to and why did their family members die.
Yep.
Um, and the official story talking about the fires bringing down the towers and everything. And we'll get into that episode a little bit more that detail tomorrow. But just for people who are just tuning in, and they're asking how many buildings in history, how many steel framed buildings have collapsed due to fire in the past in history? Well,
Yeah.
we can say today, as of today, and there's been three, and that's
Yes.
World Trade Center 1, World Trade Center 2, and World Trade Center 7. The only
Yep.
three steel frame buildings in history to collapse from fire,
And
allegedly.
seven was not hit by a plane.
Exactly.
Let's just remind people that seven was not hit by a plane, but still collapsed in on itself
Right. Yep.
in the same manner that the other two did.
Yep. So
Yeah.
the big ones, the Twin Towers, each of them was, I think it was 9.2 seconds, 110 stories from
Yep.
go to woe, complete collapse. And
Yep.
World Trade Center Building 7 was 6.2 seconds, I believe.
Yep.
Which is free fall speed. That's like
Yeah.
if you had have dropped an orange at the same time as they started falling, free fall. No,
Yeah.
nothing's stopping it. So you did some really interesting research on this, and I'm very grateful for that because it's so interesting. But the false flags, well, what is a false flag, and how? What's a list we could go by to see if an operation is a false flag?
Well, a false flag is an action carried out by a person or a group, like a government or a cabal, that is blamed on someone else to achieve a subversive goal. False flags pose an imminent threat to the security of a populace, when in fact, they're usually committed by that group's own government. So that's what a false flag is. And we have a few things to look out for when looking at a false flag. False flag events are manipulation of our trust and authority. They play on our fears and employ propaganda, essentially controlling our minds and the way we perceive events. History is rife with false flags, whether they are officially recognized or not. But being able to identify the signs and wake up to the truth is the only way to prevent them from happening in the future.
Wow, I'm really keen to get into this list, and already it's sounding very much like a false flag.
It is, isn't it? So this list, okay, the catalyst is typically an explosive, spectacular event, which is followed by immediate media saturation. Check. Of course, this is inevitable in any tragic scenario and simply the nature of the news. But there are a few warning signs of a plotted false flag. If the major news outlets are all in sync reporting on the event without thoroughly vetting the information available, then there's cause for concern. Check. Within a relatively short period of time, a scapegoat will be named, establishing an enemy with little to no trial or investigation into other possibilities. Check, check. The case will be closed, government action will ensue, and on a much more subversive level, someone will reap profit. And often those who profit are large corporations or military contractors that make exorbitant revenue through war and conflict. Now, it also says these scenarios work best when these stakes are high. The greater the shock value, the less likely people are to question the authenticity of the event. If someone dares to question the mainstream sanctioned culprit in a tragedy, they're labeled crazy, insensitive, or unpatriotic. Skeptics are denounced as pacifists who are unsupportive of their country in a time of attack. Those who do succumb to the hysteria perpetuate the group think that can be easily persuaded to allow government to restrict liberties and implement authoritarian laws.
Yep. Oh,
yep.
Absolutely.
Check, 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 and check.
Check all of those bloody boxes because, we had all of that. All of that. Of course, the shock value was there. I mean, what could be more shocking than buildings, and planes and collapses? Phew, absolutely shocking. And then, the media, well, we'll get into that on, when we talk about Building 7, but the media knew things a long while before they actually happened. Oh, yeah. How did that happen? And the patsy was organized. That was on the checklist. So the scapegoat, Osama bin Laden, was already, like the morning of 9/11, was already a suspect. Yeah, interesting. So interesting that false flag checklist. I feel it meets them all.
Yeah. And if you question anyone, and here's the thing, and when it's like anyone who, if you start questioning something because you're just curious, like this doesn't really making sense in my head, like can you help make sense? And if the initial response is not to help it make sense, but to say that you're crazy, that's a gaslighting situation, and they're telling you you're crazy because you're onto something. You're asking questions they don't want to answer. So the fastest way to shut someone down is just to call them crazy, because then we feel insignificant and possibly wrong to be asking the question. But I think in this situation and a couple other situations going on the planet right now, we have every right to ask the question, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we should always be asking what the fuck all the time. To be honest.
Yes.
But anything happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
And who benefits? Like at the end of the day, who benefits? And that's a big one. But it's true what you say, because, and the other thing that these governments and agencies do very well is they get that groupthink people, or as I like to refer to them, sheeple, to do the shaming for them. So they will get a massive group of people to shame anybody who questions and call them, unsympathetic, or call them pacifists, or, whatever it might be. Call them a name and label them as crazy and say, no, well, you're just crazy and unpatriotic. Meanwhile, they're applauding their liberties being taken away, Yeah. And 9/11 certainly saw a lot of that. And it saw a lot of, regime change. It saw war in Afghanistan, Iraq, all over the world because of this so-called terrorist attack. So where did you want to start? I thought maybe we could start, and I hope we gave a pretty good overview for people. And of course, we'd love to hear comments. We'd love to hear comments, questions, anything in the comments on the YouTube or on our social media links, wherever. But the hijackers. The hijackers was a very, very interesting one. And you mentioned before that their identification, some of their, paperwork was found. How does that happen when they're allegedly, disintegrated in a fire so hot it brings down a building?
Well, see, and that's the thing. There was a lot of paper. We'll get into that a little later, but there seemed to be a lot of paper from a burning building that was not toasted at all. Yeah. But apparently, just a passerby, just like a pedestrian, found this ID just laying on the ground, and they automatically knew, well, this is the dude. This is the guy. We got him. We got him. And the problem is that everyone said, oh, whew, we got him.
Yep.
Without asking questions. Like even the news guy, I was rewatching something the other day, and the news guy was like, I don't even think he bought it. He's like, I cannot believe I have to say this. Like, I cannot believe I'm saying these words right now, and this is my job. The fact that that was their way to announce a scapegoat was that like, and no one thought, well, why didn't it burn? It was in the plane. I can understand if it was on the 10th floor and it blew out a window.
Right.
That I can understand. But it was in the plane.
Well, and you know what? You just got me thinking of something really. You're so right. Like the person who picked it up and found it, they're like, I'm an investigator and I know that's the terrorist. I did it. But people, please, if it seems too convenient, it is. It is too convenient. And like, if you are a person, okay, put yourself in these shoes for a second. You are a person who has just witnessed potentially like crashes into the World Trade Center. World Trade Center's falling down. You're walking along the street and you're like, there's an ID on the ground. That must be important. Like amongst piles and piles of rubble, a pyroclastic cloud coming down the street, attacking you with asbestos and all these other horrible things in it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I've got to grab that ID because I know that's the guy. That's the terrorist. It's insane. And look, Shanksville had the same thing. Like,
yeah, they did.
They found all these beautiful intact passports of people.
Yeah, but no plane.
Oh, no
but
plane.
No engine to the plane.
There was no engine. No plane.
But they found that.
Well, that does seem like it's not really relevant, right? Like finding any parts of a plane that crashed. That doesn't really
no, because they just poof into thin air, don't they? Like once they're down, they just poof.
Well, apparently they do.
They're self-cleaning. It's a self-cleanup situation.
As long as they don't do that while I'm in it, then I'm okay with that.
Exactly.
Well, look.
But
sorry, you go.
Like the fact that they want us to accept this as an actual, like, how stupid do they think we are?
Exactly. And talking about stupid, like, and I don't want to, cast aspersions on anybody, but apparently the hijackers were dumb as dog shit. Like there was 19 hijackers and some of them were training and some of them even lived at US military bases. Don't you find that interesting? And some of them were informants for the FBI. Isn't that interesting? And so the without using these the same words as I did, which was dumb as dog shit, the pilot school and the flight training school where one of these hijackers attended for training, the report on his performance was that he didn't show up, he wasn't attentive, and he had very low skill with flying a Cessna. Now, a Cessna is a tiny little single-engine, propeller-driven plane. That's it. Yep. That's all it is. And he sucked at that. Yep. And we're meant to believe that this guy not only hijacked with others, but hijacked, took over, and took control of huge aeroplanes like jetliners and was able to do the things that were done, like perform the maneuvers that were performed on 9/11. And while I use only one example there, that's the same example for basically all of the hijackers. None of them were skilled pilots. And the other interesting fact that, about Flight 93, the one that so-called crashed in Shanksville, the pilot, I believe, of Flight 93 was actually an ex-Top Gun Air Force pilot.
Yes.
And so we're supposed to believe that this guy with, a high level of military training allowed a guy with a box cutter to take the plane over.
See, and that's where I have an issue too, because when you're on a flight, you're mixed up with a whole bunch of different people, and you're telling me you don't have one guy, or even one gal who's going to stand up and fight for their life, who's going to say, like, it's a box cutter. Like, go ahead, dude. Like, do your worst. Because there's going to be one guy on that bit. There's going to be one guy or two guys or three guys on that flight that are bigger than them.
Yep.
and able to take them down with one punch.
Yeah, of course. And even if you get a little cut with the box cutter, it's not
Yeah,
going to be the end of your life. It's not going to be the end of
you'll
your world.
stitch up.
Exactly.
It'll be fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's and oh,
And, and there's
but
a
isn't that the flight that so forgive me if I'm wrong, or maybe I'm thinking about the Pentagon flight where it was only 30% capacity and they were all government workers on the one
well,
plane.
well, yeah. I think that is yes. That's right. That's correct.
Okay.
But the interesting thing about all of these flights is uh, predominantly they were government employees
Yes.
or government contractors or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that's a very interesting point. And let's be real, especially with Shanksville, not a single body was found. There was no
No.
bodies present because there was no plane present. Anyway, there was no bodies found. So the people they said were on those planes were people electronically put into a seat. And
Yes.
I know that we're going to get the question, well, what about the families that spoke out, the family members and the phone calls from the planes and stuff? I go, well, you know what? Like I've seen so many times, people get paid to do things and they'll
Yeah.
willingly do it because, well, they like money. Money's good.
Money.
So
Yeah.
we heard from the mayor, actually, in Shanksville when,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking like on the day when the crash happened, he was on camera saying, "There's nothing here. There's no plane. I don't understand what's going on. There's no plane. There's nothing happening." And try and find that.
He wasn't in on it.
Yeah, exactly. Try and find that footage today, though, and you will very, very much struggle.
Yes, a lot of it is wiped, and I will not be surprised if this gets wiped.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you can't have anybody, having a different idea or,
Right.
maybe asking some questions critically about
Mhm.
the official story. But,
Yeah.
as far as the hijackers go, like,
Mm.
there's just no way. There's just no way they could have done this. They
Mm-mm.
didn't have the training. They didn't
Right.
have the skills. They really
Right.
didn't have the means. I don't believe they actually had the motivation either, to be honest.
Mm.
Um, and the links that they had to military people, to the FBI, are just too convenient for me to ignore.
Yeah.
Just far, far too convenient. So I think as far as the hijackers go, you and I would agree that it was not
Mm.
hijackers. We can rule
No,
that out. There was no
that
hijackers
never
on the day.
happened.
And the other thing
It
that
never happened.
yeah, and the other thing that supports that is that some of them were found alive. So I mean,
Living their life in Gainesville, were they?
well, exactly. Like we're told that then, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it's seen alive. And that was actually confirmed by Air Force staff who said, yes, we confirm that that person you're showing us did live on this Air Force base. And yes, they are alive.
So how do they explain that?
But we're not, but what they put a caveat on that and they go, oh, but we don't know if that was the terrorist or not. Like we're not going to comment on that. But that person in that picture is this person that was living here and is alive. And so it's all just a big bucket of and
Well, if you think about it, let's piece this together. If the government called me up and said, "Hey, we want to use your name and picture for something," and you know what, we're going to tell everyone that you died. We're going to give you some money in order for this, but keep going about your life because it's going to be so fast and it's going to be over so fast that people will forget very, very quickly.
yeah.
Fair enough. Fine. And they look for people who kind of live under the radar. They look for those people who don't have much going on, so they don't have a lot of people to say, "Wait a minute, I know that person." There's always there's never a family member that comes out and says, "Oh my goodness, like I cannot believe my son or my daughter or my uncle or whoever did this. This is horrific." So what they do is they say, "Okay, we're going to use, or at least your picture. We're going to use your picture." I say, "Okay," and then 10 years later, someone's like, "Wait a minute,
Yep.
that's the gal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's the gal. That's it." And so you're saying, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Like wrong gal. I'm not your girl." Meanwhile, They just use my face.
Yeah.
And as you said, on the planes, electronic, um, they were just tagged electronically.
Yeah, the flight manifest
That's
is
it.
just an electronic thing to say this name was in this seat. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because we don't have any proof. And
exactly.
something that I found really interesting that ties into all that was what they said was that they gave the families of everyone on the planes, they gave the families the true information, but they told them to not speak out because there were no families.
Right. So they closed that loop very
Yeah.
quickly and said,
Yeah.
yes, we did it. We did the right thing.
Yeah.
We told those
Oh,
families what happened. We are just so great and fantastic. And we love the families. But that was easy to do because there was no families. So
right.
they didn't have to do that.
Because they didn't do it for the 3,000 other people's families that they didn't do
No,
it for
no, they
because
certainly
those
did not.
people were real.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
families are very real.
Yeah. And they didn't want to
So
listen to
why
those
is one
people
set of
either.
families so special from the other ones?
Yep.
This is a huge problem.
Exactly. Exactly. And the only way they can get past that is, and I don't feel like they're past it because, some of the families are still asking to this day, what
Mhm,
the hell
mhm.
happened? And
I would be too.
they've got it in court to still try and get more information. But what the government did was they said, well, we've done the 9/11 Commission report. That's the official story. And everything else is like classified. It's redacted. It's secret. It's blah, 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 blah. All these excuses. And then the mainstream media, which is the huge, huge lever that they pull, they go, all right, mainstream media, pull the lever and tell everybody this. And that's what happens. And it just gets
Yep,
repeated over and over and over and over again
yep,
until the sheep will just accept it and say, yep, that's what
yep,
happened. But
yep,
those families, which is, your good point, those families of the towers, no, they're not accepting it and they wouldn't accept it. But thing is,
yeah,
they're silenced, unfortunately.
yeah.
Um,
And all the first responders and everyone who just
yeah.
got caught in the
Ah,
crosshairs, so many people, and people still to this day are having health issues because of the asbestos and because of whatever
yes.
happened there. Like it's an ongoing thing that they have no answers to. They're
Yep.
just they're just shoved under the rug. Like
Exactly.
they don't matter, and they do matter.
They really do matter, and I'm glad you brought that asbestos up again because I was absolutely disgusted to find out that they 100%
Yep.
knew that at least 75 floors of the something like that, 70 to 75
Yeah.
floors of the World Trade Center, uh, North Tower, I think it was. Anyway, the one that was built first was 75% asbestos inside. They knew that immediately, and
Hmm.
the government officials were the ones who were wearing the full hazmat suits and respiratory masks. And
Yep.
they never advised the first responders, the construction workers, the people on the ground working in all of that dust to wear masks, to wear protective equipment. And so people, like you said, have died of asbestos poisoning, of all of those toxic chemicals that were around there. And the government knew about it. That's the disgusting part and didn't tell anybody.
Yep.
And my theory on that, very sadly, but my theory on that is that they were hoping for just that. That the people who were first responders, the people who were working around there, wouldn't be around for long enough to tell the truth about what happened
Speak
and
up.
what they saw.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you can only you I can't imagine. I don't know what is involved in swiping the internet of like clearing your stuff off, but I have to imagine that it's a daily sweep of stuff. And I don't know how they decide if it's misinformation or not.
Huh.
Like it's got to be someone's full-time job. It's got to be a full department's job every single day to make sure that this stuff is gone from the internet and
Oh,
from anywhere
yeah.
because they can't have people asking questions and sharing and doing what we're doing now. They can't have that.
No, that's right, and you're spot on. I feel like there is a huge resource dedicated to doing that because you
Yeah.
look at what Edward Snowden said about surveillance and all of those sorts of things,
Yeah.
and yeah, they're doing all of those things every single day. And if I think back about 10 years ago was when I really started diving into some of the truth about 9/11, and
Mhm.
there was hundreds of videos on YouTube about it, hundreds of
Hmm.
them, really,
Yeah.
really good ones too. Like, people think of us, and this is not made of tin foil, even though sometimes it should be.
Should be.
I've got another little hat that's made of tin foil, but it's it's one of those things where it's all disappeared. All those videos that I used to
Yeah.
watch, all those things that really got me interested in the truth, and lots of facts, architects, engineers, all kinds of people talking, all
Yeah.
gone, all wiped. And so it's
Yeah.
probably easier for them now, but at the time, yeah, it definitely would have been a full-time job. But you think about everyone who does videos every day, they
Yeah.
could just upload new stuff again, so they've got to be onto it.
Well, that's just it, because we could upload this every week.
Right.
Every single week, just keep uploading it and just,
Yeah.
just get ahead of it a little bit. Or we could ask, all of our subscribers on our other YouTube channels, just say, hey, you know what? Like, just share this out, get it out to everyone you got. And there you go. You got,
Yep.
a whole bunch of whack of people that they're trying to chase after to get this information. But just think about all that work that went into those videos, because we know how much work goes into
Right. Yes.
into creating videos, and just all that work demolished, just wiped out because the government doesn't like it.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And all of that work gone, and all of
Yeah.
that opportunity for somebody who seeks the truth to actually find it,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's really, really horrendous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we we touched on the hijackers.
Yeah.
They didn't do this.
They didn't do it.
Let's check that
No.
off the list. They didn't do this.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing, and there's a few more topics to kind of cover for this episode before we get, I feel, into the meat and bones of the next episode, which will be about the towers and Trade Center 7. But the
Hmm.
war games that were going on September the 11th,
Yeah.
2001, are extremely interesting.
Yes, they are. They are. Now, what are war games, Stevie?
Well,
For those who don't know?
well, war games basically are exercises that are run on a large scale, sometimes within one nation or multinational, to simulate an actual wartime situation. And war games specifically, can be broken down into. So you think of a war game as a huge operation, right, or a huge exercise, and then that gets broken down into smaller exercises as well. And so you have small operations running within one big exercise. But a war game essentially is a fake scenario set up to practice what could happen in a real world situation.
Right. Now, I do know they were sharing airspace with Canada that day because they were going into Alaska. And they were playing war games that day.
They were playing multiple war games, and what I
Yeah.
find super interesting is that one of the war games specifically, one of the exercises was
Hmm.
around airplanes being flown into the World Trade Center.
You can't make that shit up, man. You can't.
You cannot make that shit up.
No.
That was the actual military exercise that was running that day, was hijacking planes and crashing them into the World Trade Center. And what happened on September 11th?
Yeah.
Well, it actually happened, didn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are, but my theory is that for a lot of the minions in the military, who are
Yeah.
good people and want to do the right thing, just wanted to be part of an exercise.
Right.
For a lot of those participants in the exercise, they didn't know what was going on, but
No.
certainly the higher ups did, and it was a
Mhm.
military exercise that turned into a live fire exercise, which basically means it's not blanks anymore. It's not fake. It's not just made up. It's the actual event happening.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Do you think that was in poor taste to be doing that specific war game when, like, someone fucking knew, and they're like, what would be funny, that we do this? Like, how do we explain it
Right.
after the fact? Because people are gonna want to know, why wasn't the fighter jets like deployed immediately as soon as you found out those planes were hijacked? You should have had a fighter jet on his ass, like, within 5 minutes.
Well,
Within 5 minutes. And no, because you were off playing reindeer games. That
Yeah,
didn't happen.
yeah. You're off playing like Top Gun, you know. Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting that you say that, and I'm glad you brought that up, the interception time, because
Yeah.
do you know up until I think it was actually only in the last 60 days leading up to September 11th, 2001, the Air
Mhm.
Force had intercepted 67 commercial jetliners
Yep.
with fighter planes. 67 in a month. And the response time was an average of 2 to 5 minutes.
Yes, it was.
And on 9/11, they couldn't get a single fighter jet to intercept these planes.
Well, that's not technically true. That's not technically true
Can I
because
can,
there were some spotted
can I say
over
that?
the Hudson.
But going by the official story, can I add that? Going by the official
Yes,
story,
yes, you could add that.
there were no fighter planes scrambled. Yeah,
Right. Yes. Yes. Very, very interesting that that day they weren't able to. They didn't know 4 planes were hijacked. They didn't know because they were just off, playing their games. And I understand they have to do those operations. I get it. I'm not saying, oh, they weren't doing their job because they were doing their job. That is their job to be always ready and to be always,
of course.
keeping themselves sharp. But to like they when your air force is supposed to be patrolling the skies, you don't take all of them and go play games.
Right.
You have, you always have a few left behind as an emergency measure. You're hoping nothing's going to happen. You're at 67 in a month. Something tells me that, they're not just going to leave US airspace to come into Canada
Yeah.
and leave everyone, to defend for
Well,
themselves.
it's
Like none of that makes sense.
no, it doesn't. You know, they're able to do 67 in a month, 2 to 5 minutes, and then on 9/11, they're all just sitting there having a cup of jubba. It's like,
Yeah.
eh,
Yeah.
I don't think I'll go today. Like,
Yeah.
well, and they're off doing exercises, and it's a great point that you bring up. Why do they do this? Like, what is it in poor taste? Well, I think they had to. I think they had to run these exercises and these specific exercises because I feel on an operation like this, in a false flag like this, you get to a certain level, and above that level, yep, all those people know what's going on for real,
Yeah.
and they're just bad people. Like they know what's going
Yeah.
on, and they're bad people. And then below that level, you've got a group of people you need to actually facilitate what's happening, but
Right.
you can't let them know what's going on, really.
Right.
So,
Well, because they need to react.
exactly,
They
and
need to react in the way that they should
yes,
be reacting instead
yeah,
of reacting in the way of, because we react differently when we know something's happening. We
yeah,
react differently when it's a complete goddamn surprise and you're just running on adrenaline at that point.
yeah. And you're so right. And to keep that veil of to keep that veil over that lower level of people, you
Mhm.
say, well, this is an exercise that we're doing. It's an exercise that's happening. So when they see the planes diverting off their course and everything, I go, cool, that's part of the exercise. I'll keep doing my job. Cool. And that's the other reason why as well, because they said, and the FAA even said that on that day, there was many phantom planes on the radar system because they do that in exercises. They put phantom planes on there so that the
Mhm.
pilots have something to look at and go, okay, yeah, we got a bogey over there or whatever. So
Mhm.
um,
Sorry.
it's on the windscreen. He just sneezed. No, but, but they need to keep that veil in front of those.
Sorry. I don't know why that's so funny.
Well, I'm just glad that somebody's laughing at something that I said. So it doesn't happen often.
Oh, oh, yes, it does. Ugh.
But it's
Oh,
they've got to keep that veil over everybody's eyes, right? They're the people who are
right.
not complicit. They need to keep them in the dark about what's really going on. And what better way to do
Mhm.
that than by having an exercise? And what is interesting is that on the official memos for this exercise, like on the booklet for this exercise,
Yes.
whose face was on it?
Oh, can I guess? Can I guess?
Yes, you get extra points if you do it quickly.
Think it's Bin Laden. I'll take Bin Laden for $100 million.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner chicken dinner. Osama
Woohoo!
bin Laden's face was on the operational exercise that was running on September 1st, September 11th, sorry, 2001, his face was on the exercise that was being conducted. And who ended up being the patsy for double points? Who ended up being the patsy?
Ooh, 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 ooh. I'm gonna take Bin Laden again for $200 million.
Ooh, you are rich, and I love it. So yes, correct. And what I found, what I found interesting about Mr. Bin Laden was that a lot of people out there probably believe that he confessed and said that he was behind the 9/11 attacks,
Yeah,
but he never did say that. He
he
said
did
he
not.
supported it because he doesn't like America. He supported the
Right,
attacks and he endorsed the attacks, but he never owned up to it. He never said it was him who did it.
right.
And the Taliban actually said all the way back in 2001, they would hand over Osama bin Laden to the
Mhm.
US if the US could provide evidence that bin Laden was involved in the attacks.
Yep.
And the US never provided that evidence, and they still to this day have never publicly released any evidence to suggest that Osama bin Laden was involved.
No, and even on his wanted poster, 9/11 was never mentioned because they didn't have enough evidence against him to put that on his wanted poster. So they just, had some stuff that, he actually they actually had evidence for, but
Right.
that was never on it.
Yep.
And the fact that people asked and they said, "We don't have enough evidence." And they said, "Oh, okay." What do you mean, "Oh, okay"?
Yeah.
That's not okay.
No. Not okay. Not okay at all. And that's where you start looking at, well, okay, what's the benefit of making Osama bin Laden the patsy, making him the fall guy? What's the benefit?
Right.
What does that give you access to, or give you,
Right.
the support of the people to do?
Mhm. Right.
And follow on the next 20 years and take a look at Afghanistan and take a look
Yep.
at Iraq and all of those things. But I feel we'll get into some more of the overarching reasons, motivations, and all of that as we move along. But
Yeah.
for me, the war games is very interesting, and they needed to do that for various reasons. But again, like I said before, if you think that something's all too convenient, well, it is. It is too
Yeah.
convenient,
Yeah.
and it's done on purpose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
um, so, talking about convenience, the Pentagon strike.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the? And I'm going to do this again. I feel like I'm doing this all day
Yeah.
because it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
none of this really happened. But the Pentagon strike, like, what do you think about
Yes.
that?
Well, I don't know at what level I'm more disgusted because it was the towers were humans, obviously, and US citizens. So they did that, that this was government humans. And the fact that they have never released any video of a plane entering that building ever. They've just shown the explosion. And the impact this plane made was really odd because it didn't have wings. This plane had no wings because and all of the reenactments that you see with the towers, you see that
Right.
the wings cut through the building. When it comes to the Pentagon, it is just a clean, it's a clean entrance
Yeah.
in that one area.
Yeah.
And there's no plane. Once again, there's no plane.
Yeah.
We're missing two huge engines. These were huge planes.
Yeah.
There was no video of it going in. There was video of everything was fine, and then cut to the explosion.
Yeah.
Why can't you release the part of the plane? If you can replay the Twin Towers over and over and over again on mainstream media, you can show the plane going into the Pentagon.
Yeah.
But no, because there was no plane.
It-
Planes don't just poof. They
they,
don't poof.
they do not. They absolutely do not. You're so right. Like, and I agree, 100%. There was no plane. Like,
Yeah.
surprise, there was no plane
Yeah.
that hit the Pentagon. And there's so many reasons for that. But I like what you said there about the lack of video footage. The FBI,
Yeah.
within something like 24 hours, had collected every single possible video recording from
Yep.
all around the Pentagon. And if you think
Yep.
that, oh, well, I mean, the Pentagon's got cameras. Yeah, they do. They've got
Mhm.
cameras covering every single inch of that exterior.
Yep.
But do you think they're going to show anybody that footage? Of course
No.
not. Of course
No.
not. And they had to get legally petitioned, I believe, or it went to court to even get two frames, the two frames that we see. One frame, which is essentially nothing, and
Yeah.
second frame, what you said, just boom,
Yeah.
bang, like there's an explosion. Now,
Yeah.
I think when I look very, very closely at that first frame,
Yeah.
it does look like an aeroplane, but a very, very, very small aeroplane with tiny little wings on the side, which actually probably looks more like a missile.
There it
So,
is.
I,
There it is.
yeah. So for me, that theory lines up so much better because the initial strike on Pentagon left like you said, a very small hole. It was like a
Yeah.
16-foot hole, which is
Yeah.
not big, and it's not a big
No.
hole at all. And then later, because of the fires and the other damage, bigger sections collapsed, and so the hole got bigger.
Got to 19, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it was 19, something like that. I think it
Yeah.
actually ended up getting to like 70 feet or something. Like it got quite big. But that initial strike was a circular hole in the
Yeah.
side, 16 feet, and there was no wreckage. Not one piece of wreckage has been officially found to say
No.
this was a part of flight, whatever. So
Yeah.
it's not it wasn't a plane, and it wasn't Superman. It was, in my opinion, it was a missile.
Yeah.
And sorry, you go.
Oh no, I just have a question though. So there were reports of that people actually they claim who knows who these people are. They claim that the plane like came like very very low like over their cars because it came right over the freeway. So and then it like knocked out some poles. What could have knocked over those poles? Could it have been detonated to, because we don't know if those individuals that are on the news are actual witnesses.
Oh, I would.
Like question everything and everyone when it comes to people on the news, when it comes to this and what they're willing to tell at this point in stage of the game.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked. And yes, I mean, that could have been done for those polls. But what I think actually happened, if you look at the amount of people, witnesses there wasn't
Yeah.
many. There was only a couple. It's not like you had a freeway bumper to bumper of people who all saw the same thing. It was one dude in a
Right.
taxi who's part of
Yeah.
a motorcycle gang who was very likely bribed, paid, whatever to say what he said.
Yeah.
And what's more likely to me is that those light poles and everything like that was all set up already.
Yeah.
That was all done prior to, because nobody else was around. There was
No.
nobody else around. So that was all set up prior to. And then after the Pentagon was hit, it's all there. Okay, cool. Yep, there's some light poles. But the question I
But
have
there
with
was no insert, like there was nothing on the grass, like the grass going into the Pentagon.
right,
There was nothing. And of course they're not going to have their landing gear down because they're not landing,
right.
but the belly would still hit.
Yeah, well, if you
The
look,
tail on impact would
mhm,
still hit. Like there was
yeah,
nothing. There was no footprint from
mm-mm,
this plane whatsoever.
nope.
That's impossible.
Those scorch marks from two jet engines, which do have a
No.
very hot jet stream coming out of the back of the engines.
Yep.
No burn marks on the grass.
No.
Nothing. Not a single thing. Not a single shred of evidence left there to suggest it was a plane. Um,
Right.
the other, intriguing things about the Pentagon is that the side that was hit was the only side to have reinforced bomb-resistant concrete. The other the other sections of the Pentagon were still under construction for that reinforcement. So they knew by hitting that it would minimize
Yeah.
minimize the damage, the deaths, and all of those things. But
And it
also,
was still under construction because they said a lot of people who would have worked in that section weren't there because it was still under construction. So
right,
the death amount of people was lower than what it normally would have been on any other given day
yeah.
or time.
Yep, absolutely. And the last thing maybe for me with the with the official story, what really happened on 9/11 with the Pentagon is the maneuver conducted by the pilot, allegedly, of the plane. So this
Yeah.
is a guy who couldn't fly a Cessna. He couldn't fly a
Yep.
tiny little single prop engine plane.
Yep.
First of all, he's overtaken and overthrown everybody on a jet plane.
Yep.
Then he's completed a maneuver at speed and a turn that's almost impossible, and that's verified by 30-year veteran pilots of those planes, that it's nearly impossible to complete the turn at that speed and that flight path that he took. And so to say that somebody who could barely fly a tiny little plane could do that is ridiculous to me. Absolutely
Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah. That's like me thinking like maybe I'm doing like flight simulations like late at night on my TV, and I think I can go fly a 747 and doing
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Look at me go.
Yeah. Well, I think you should give it a try.
I've
If
always
well,
wanted to learn to fly.
if these guys could do it, if
Ah,
anybody
so
could
can
do it,
I.
yeah,
So can
of
I.
course.
So
Good.
can you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go do it today. Why not? I got nothing on. All right. So yeah, I think that's we've pretty much summarized. There's obviously lots of
Yeah.
detail with the Pentagon with all of these incidents, but
Yeah.
I think we've
Yeah.
summarized that fairly well. That no,
Mhm.
this is ridiculous. And if this discussion we're having does nothing else but spark some interest in other people to question things and go and find some more truth, then that is an absolute win. I think that's a fantastic thing.
Yeah. I
So for
agree.
this episode, are you happy to finish off having a discussion about Shanksville, which we did touch on a little bit
Yes.
before, but
Yes. I
good
would
old
love to. And it's probably going to be a quick conversation because once again, no fucking plane.
there's no fucking plane. There's nothing to talk about. Like, what the
They found
fuck?
pieces of the fuselage, right? Like they found little pieces of that, but it was also pieces that were easily carried in because they were easily carried out.
Yeah, they found tiny pieces and tiny passports. That's what they found. They
Yep.
found passports of hijackers that, all right, so let me just talk really plainly here. Some fucking FBI agent grabs his bag full of passports and a couple of bits of
Mhm.
aeroplane and walks out to
Yep.
Shanksville, where there is smoke. I don't know, nobody denies that. But
Oh yeah.
there's lots of little fire, baby. Throw some passports on the ground with a piece of plane, and we're all expected to believe that that is an aeroplane crash. But
Yep.
I would absolutely, very strongly suggest that anybody who doubts what we're saying here, go and compare actual plane crashes, the debris, the bodies, like everything that's there. Like just compare that with what you saw at
Mhm.
Shanksville, and you tell me if they were telling the truth.
Yeah.
If there was an actual plane there.
Yeah. I don't
Ugh,
think there was.
neither do I. And we may get into this a little further down the track, but I don't think there was any actual pilots in control of that plane.
I don't think so either. I don't think so. We have some theories and we're gonna bust out those theories in part two. But we do have some theories because certain things just don't make sense. And as you follow the bouncing ball of certain things, other things make sense. Like
Absolutely.
they really do. So I just and the thing is we can't verify that these pilots were even in the planes. Everyone's listening to the 911 calls and all of these calls from these people on the planes, but we could do that right here. We could create that scenario
Yeah.
of making it look like I'm the flight control and you're a pilot.
Yeah.
We could make it sound like it. We could everything it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much. And especially when you have flight simulation that makes it seem like it is fucking real.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we don't even have we could do that. And we
Yeah.
don't even have the billions of dollars to back us up to make it happen.
No.
So of course they can do all of that. And
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to taking a deep dive some more into this on our
Yeah.
second episode covering 9/11. But
Yeah.
great discussion today. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And I hope
Thank
everybody's
you.
enjoyed it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we don't want to be insensitive to the families and the people who lost their lives. We're doing it because they lost their lives and there's no fucking answers.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this.
Yeah. The government fucked over the people of the world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we want to know why. And we want to know
Yeah.
what really happened.
Yeah. So we will see you in episode 2. Thank you so much, Stevie.
Thank you. Great discussion. And I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.